A black girl drops a purse in a luxury store, only to be mocked and accused of theft. Like and subscribe to see her shocking revenge in our latest video. And don't miss what's next. The polished marble floors of Luxe Boutique gleamed under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, their light reflecting off glass display cases filled with designer purses, silk scarves, and shimmering jewelry. The air was thick with the scent of expensive leather and floral perfume, a symphony of luxury that whispered wealth and exclusivity. The boutique, located in the heart of downtown, was a haven for the elite. Its clientele a parade of well-dressed women clutching credit cards and designer bags. But on this Saturday afternoon, a different figure stepped through the glass doors. Amara Johnson, a high school girl of African descent. Her presence a quiet contrast to the store's opulence. She wore a simple denim jacket, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. Her curly hair pulled back into a loose ponytail, her brown eyes wide with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Amara had come to the boutique with a purpose. She wanted to buy a purse for her mother's birthday, a small token of love for the woman who had always supported her. She'd saved up for months, her allowance and earnings from babysitting carefully tucked into a small envelope in her pocket. The boutique was intimidating. Its sleek design and hushed atmosphere, a far cry from the thrift stores Amara usually shopped at. But she squared her shoulders, her determination outweighing her nerves. She wanted to make her mother proud, to give her something special, something that matched the strength and elegance she saw in her every day. Amara moved through the aisles, her fingers brushing against the soft leather of a display of purses, their price tags making her eyes widen. She knew she couldn't afford the most expensive ones, but she hoped to find something within her budget, something beautiful, something her mother would love. The store was quiet, save for the soft murmur of conversation between a few customers and the faint click of heels on the marble floor. Amara felt the weight of eyes on her, the staff, dressed in crisp black uniforms, their hair neatly styled, watched her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. A young employee named Jessica, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, stood behind the counter, her blue eyes narrowing as she observed Amara, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Can I help you?" Jessica called out. Her voice sharp, her tone laced with a condescension that made Amara's stomach churn. Amara turned, her smile polite but hesitant. "I'm just looking for a purse," she said, her voice soft. "It's for my mom's birthday." Jessica's eyes flicked over Amara's outfit, her sneakers, her worn jacket, her expression shifting to one of disdain. "We don't have anything in your price range," she said, her words cutting. "Maybe try somewhere else." Amara's face flushed, her hands tightening around the strap of her backpack. She wanted to argue, to tell Jessica she had saved enough, that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. But the words wouldn't come, her throat tight with embarrassment. She turned back to the display, her resolve wavering but not broken. She wouldn't let Jessica's rudeness chase her away. Not yet. The other customers in the store, a pair of well-dressed women in their 40s, glanced at Amara, their whispers audible as they passed. "She doesn't look like she can afford anything here," one said, her tone dripping with judgment. The other nodded, probably just wasting their time. Amara heard them, her heart sinking, but she kept her focus on the purses, her fingers brushing against a small navy clutch, its leather soft, its price tag just within her budget. She lifted it carefully, her smile returning. This was the one, she thought. Her mother would love it. But as she turned to take it to the counter, her nerves got the better of her, her hands trembling. The clutch slipped from her fingers, falling to the floor with a soft thud. The sound echoed in the quiet store, a small noise that felt like a thunderclap in Amara's ears. Her heart stopped, her breath catching as she bent to pick it up. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. But before she could retrieve the purse, Jessica was there, her heels clicking sharply against the marble, her face contorted with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of everyone in the store. Amara froze, her hands hovering over the purse. I didn't mean to drop it, she said, her voice trembling. Jessica's eyes narrowed, her tone venomous. You're not supposed to touch things you can't afford. She spat. I'm calling the manager. Amara's heart raced, her cheeks burning with shame. She wanted to explain, to tell Jessica it was an accident, that she had the money. But the words wouldn't come. The other customers watched, their whispers growing louder, their stares a weight Amara couldn't bear. She felt small, invisible, unworthy. And as Jessica turned to fetch the manager, Amara knew this was only the beginning. A storm was brewing, one that would test her strength, her courage, her very identity, and she had no idea how it would change everything. The tension in Lux's boutique crackled like static electricity, the air thick with the weight of judgment as Amara stood frozen, her hands trembling over the navy clutch that lay on the marble floor, its soft leather a stark contrast to the coldness of Jessica's glare. The employee's sharp words still echoed in Amara's ears. You're not supposed to touch things you can't afford. A cruel accusation that cut deeper than Amara could have imagined. Her heart pounded, her cheeks burning with shame, her brown eyes glistening with unshed tears. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, to explain that it was an accident, that she had the money to pay for the purse, but her throat was tight, her voice trapped by the weight of humiliation. Jessica stood over her, her blonde hair gleaming under the chandelier lights, her blue eyes narrowed with disdain, her arms crossed as if Amara were a criminal caught in the act. The other customers in the store, two women in designer dresses, watched with thinly veiled amusement, their whispers a constant hum. She shouldn't even be here, one muttered, her tone dripping with superiority. Amara heard them, her stomach churning, her hands shaking as she reached for the clutch again. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean to drop it. But Jessica wasn't listening, her face contorted with anger. You don't get to touch things and then pretend it's an accident, she snapped. Her voice loud enough to draw the attention of another employee, a young man named Ethan, who hurried over, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. What's going on? He asked, his tone cautious. Jessica turned to him, her voice sharp. This girl dropped a purse, probably trying to steal it, she said, her words a vicious accusation that made Amara flinch, her heart sinking. I wasn't stealing, she said, her voice louder now, a desperate edge to it. I was going to buy it. I have the money. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the small envelope with her savings, her hands trembling as she held it up. But Jessica laughed, a cold, mocking sound that echoed through the boutique. That's not even enough for a keychain here, she sneered, her eyes flicking to the envelope with disdain. You're wasting our time. Amara's face burned, her tears threatening to spill over. She wanted to run, to escape the suffocating judgment, but her feet felt rooted to the floor, her pride refusing to let her flee. Ethan hesitated, his expression softening slightly. Maybe we should just let her go, he said, his voice low, but Jessica shot him a glare. Not a chance, she said, her tone final. I'm getting the manager. She turned on her heel, her heels clicking sharply against the marble as she marched toward the back of the store, leaving Amara standing there, her hands clutching the envelope, her heart racing. The customers continued to whisper, their words a dagger in Amara's chest. She looks like she doesn't belong, one said. Probably thought she could get away with it, the other added. Amara felt their stares, a weight she couldn't shake, her mind racing with a mix of shame and anger. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd only wanted to buy a gift for her mother. But they saw her as a thief, a nuisance, a girl who didn't belong. The minutes stretched on, each one an eternity, until Jessica returned with the manager. A tall man named Richard, his suit impeccably tailored, his gray eyes cold and unyielding. He strode toward Amara with an air of authority, his expression one of barely concealed contempt. What's the problem here? He asked, his voice clipped. Jessica gestured to Amara, her tone accusatory. She dropped a purse. Sir, I think she was trying to steal it, and now she's causing a scene. Amara's heart stopped, her breath catching. That's not true, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I dropped it by accident. I was going to buy it. I have the money. She held up the envelope again, her hands shaking. But Richard's eyes flicked to it with disdain, his lips curling into a sneer. You expect me to believe that? He said, his tone dripping with skepticism. Girls like you don't just walk in here with enough money for a purse like that. Amara's tears finally spilled over, her voice breaking. I saved up for months, she said, her words a desperate plea. It's for my mom's birthday. But Richard wasn't listening, his face hardening. You're causing a disturbance, he said, his voice cold. And I don't tolerate troublemakers in my store. He turned to Jessica, his tone sharp. Call the police. Amara's heart plummeted, her breath coming in short gasps. No, please, she said, her voice a whisper. I didn't do anything wrong. But Richard ignored her, his eyes cold. Jessica nodded, pulling out her phone with a smirk. They'll be here soon, she said, her tone triumphant. Amara felt the world closing in, her vision blurring with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched the envelope. She didn't know what to do, who to turn to. But then she remembered her mother, her rock, her protector. She pulled out her phone with them, her fingers shaking as she dialed. Mom, she said, her voice breaking as the call connected. I need you. The line crackled, her mother's voice a lifeline in the storm. Amara, what's wrong? She asked, her tone urgent. Amara's tears fell faster. I'm at Luxe Boutique, she said, her voice trembling. They think I stole something. They're calling the police. Her mother's voice hardened, a fierce edge to it. Stay there. I'm coming, she said, her tone a promise. Amara hung up, her heart racing, her eyes darting to Jessica and Richard, who stood with their arms crossed, their expressions smug. Calling for backup won't help you, Richard said, his voice mocking. The police will handle this. Jessica nodded, her smirk widening. Maybe your mom can bail you out, she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Amara's hands clenched into fists, her anger rising through the fear. She hadn't done anything wrong, and she wouldn't let them break her. Not now, not ever. She stood there, her tears drying, her resolve hardening. The storm was far from over, but Amara knew help was on the way, and when it arrived, it would change everything. The atmosphere in Luxe Boutique had turned suffocating. The soft glow of the chandeliers, now a harsh spotlight on Amara as she stood near the purse display, her hands clutching her phone, her brown eyes glistening with a mix of fear and defiance. The navy clutch she dropped still lay on the marble floor, its presence a silent accusation in the eyes of Jessica and Richard, the employee and manager who had turned a simple accident into a public humiliation. Jessica stood with her arms crossed, her blonde hair catching the light, her blue eyes glinting with a smug satisfaction as she spoke into her phone. Yes, we need an officer at Luxe Boutique. We have a suspected thief causing a disturbance. Her voice was loud, deliberate, ensuring every customer in the store heard. Amara's heart pounded, her breath coming in short gasps, her tears drying on her cheeks as she fought to hold herself together. I didn't steal anything, she said again, her voice trembling but firm. I told you I have the money. She held up the envelope, her savings a testament to her honesty. But Richard, the manager, dismissed it with a sneer, his gray eyes cold and unyielding. Save it for the police, he said, his tone dripping with contempt. You've caused enough trouble. The words hit Amara like a slap, her hands shaking, her mind racing with a mix of shame and anger. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet here she was, being treated like a criminal in a store she'd entered with nothing but good intentions. The other customers watched, their whispers a constant hum of judgment. She doesn't look like she belongs here, one woman said, her voice low but cutting. They should have kicked her out sooner. Her friend nodded. Their stares a weight Amara couldn't escape. Ethan, the other employee, stood to the side, his expression torn. "Maybe we should wait for her mom," he said, his voice hesitant. But Jessica shot him a glare. "She's just stalling," she snapped. "The police will handle it." Amara's heart sank, her hope fading with each passing second. She wanted to run, to escape the suffocating scrutiny, but her mother's voice on the phone echoed in her mind. "Stay there. I'm coming." A promise that kept her rooted to the spot, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't let them break her. Not now, not ever. The minutes stretched on, each one an eternity. The tension in the store building like a storm ready to break. Amara stood near the display, her hands clenched into fists, her eyes darting to the glass doors, waiting for her mother, praying she'd arrive before the police. But her hope was short-lived. The doors swung open, and two officers stepped inside, their uniforms a stark contrast to the boutique's elegance, their presence sending a ripple of murmurs through the customers. "What's the situation?" the lead officer. A tall man with a stern expression asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Richard stepped forward, his tone smooth but accusatory. "This girl dropped a purse and refused to leave when we asked," he said, his words a twisted version of the truth. "We believe she was trying to steal it, and she's been causing a disturbance." Amar's breath caught, her voice rising in desperation. "That's not true," she said, her words a plea. "I dropped it by accident. I was going to buy it. I have the money." She held up the envelope again, her hands trembling, but the officer's eyes flicked to it with skepticism. "We'll need to take your statement," he said, his tone neutral. But Jessica interjected, her voice sharp. "She's lying. She doesn't belong here. Look at her." Her words were a dagger, her tone laced with prejudice. Amara's tears threatened to spill over again, her voice breaking. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said, her words a whisper. The second officer, a woman with a softer expression, stepped closer. "Let's calm down," she said, her voice gentle. "We'll sort this out." But Richard wasn't interested in calming down, his face hardening. "She needs to leave. Now, he said, his tone final. "I want her out of my store." Amara felt the world closing in, her vision blurring with tears, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone. She didn't know how to fight this, how to prove her innocence. But then she heard it. The sharp click of heels against the marble floor, a sound that cut through the tension like a knife. The glass doors swung open again, and a woman stepped inside, her presence commanding, her tailored red suit a blaze of authority, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo, her brown eyes blazing with a fury that made the room fall silent. It was Victoria Johnson, Amar's mother, the owner of the luxe boutique chain. Her arrival a thunderclap in the storm. The customers gasped, their whispers turning to stunned silence. Jessica's smirk faltered, her face paling. Richard's confidence evaporated, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to find words. Victoria's eyes locked onto Amara, softening for a moment as she saw her daughter's tear-streaked face. "Amara, are you okay?" she asked, her voice a mix of concern and rage. Amara nodded, her tears falling faster. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. Victoria turned to Richard, her gaze a storm of fury. "What is going on here?" she demanded, her voice low but lethal. Richard stammered, his hands fidgeting. "Mrs. Johnson, I didn't know," he began, but Victoria cut him off, her tone sharp. "You didn't know what? That this is my daughter? That you've been accusing her of theft without evidence? That you've humiliated her in my store?" Her words were a whip, each one striking with precision. Jessica stepped back, her face ashen. We thought she was stealing," she stammered, her voice trembling. Victoria's eyes flashed. "You thought wrong," she said, her tone icy. She turned to the officers, her voice calm but commanding. There's been a misunderstanding. Officers, my daughter is not a thief, and I'd like you to leave." The lead officer nodded, his expression apologetic. "Yes, ma'am," he said, gesturing to his partner. The two turned to leave, their departure a quiet acknowledgement of Victoria's authority. Amara watched, her tears drying, her heart lifting, her mother's presence a shield she'd never known she needed. But the storm wasn't over. Victoria turned back to Richard and Jessica, her fury a force that shook the boutique to its core, and Amara knew that this moment, this reckoning, would change everything. The silence in Luxe Boutique was deafening, the air charged with a tension so thick it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Victoria Johnson stood at the center of the storm, her red suit a beacon of authority, her brown eyes blazing with a fury that made even the chandeliers seem to dim. Her presence had turned the boutique upside down. The smug confidence of Jessica and Richard shattered in an instant. Amara stood behind her mother, her tears drying, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and awe. Her mother's voice still echoed in her ears. "You thought wrong." A fierce declaration that had stripped away the accusations, the humiliation, the pain. Victoria's gaze swept the room, taking in the stunned customers, the pale-faced employees, the fallen Navy clutch that had sparked this nightmare. Her eyes softened as they returned to Amara, her hand reaching out to gently touch her daughter's shoulder. "I'm here now," she said, her voice a quiet promise. Amara nodded, her chest heaving as the weight of the moment settled over her. She felt safe, protected, seen, for the first time since stepping into the boutique. Victoria turned back to Richard, her expression a storm of controlled rage. "Explain yourself," she demanded, her tone low but lethal. Richard's face was ashen, his hands trembling as he struggled to find words. "Mrs. Johnson, I had no idea she was your daughter," he stammered, his voice a mix of panic and desperation. We thought she was stealing. She dropped the purse and—" Victoria cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. "You thought?" she repeated, her words a whip. "You thought it was acceptable to accuse a young girl without evidence? To humiliate her in front of everyone? To call the police on my daughter?" Her voice rose with each question, her anger a force that shook the room. Richard took a step back, his hands raised as if to shield himself. "It was a misunderstanding," he said, his tone pleading. "I was just protecting the store." Victoria's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Protecting the store," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You weren't protecting anything. You were acting on prejudice. You saw a young girl who didn't fit your narrow idea of who belongs here, and you decided to tear her down." Jessica, who had been silent, her face pale and her hands trembling, stepped forward, her voice a whisper. "We didn't know," she said, her tone desperate. We thought she couldn't afford it." Victoria turned to her, her gaze a storm of fury. "You thought wrong," she said again, her words a final verdict. "And your ignorance has cost you dearly." The customers, who had been watching in stunned silence, began to whisper, their voices a mix of shock and discomfort. "That's Victoria Johnson," one woman murmured. "The owner," her friend nodded, her eyes wide. "I can't believe they did that to her daughter." Amara listened, her heart lifting with each word, her mother's presence a shield that made her feel invincible. Victoria took a step closer to Richard, her voice low but commanding. "You failed in your role as a manager," she said, her tone final. "You failed to uphold the values of this company, values of respect, of integrity, of fairness, effective immediately. You are fired." Richard's face crumpled, his mouth opening in protest. "Mrs. Johnson, please," he began, but Victoria held up a hand, silencing him. "Get out," she said, her voice cold, "and don't ever step foot in one of my stores again." Richard stood there, his shoulders slumping, his pride shattered. He turned to leave, His steps slow, his head bowed, the weight of his mistake a burden he couldn't escape. Victoria turned to Jessica, her gaze unyielding. "And you," she said, her voice sharp. "You participated in this. You accused my daughter without evidence. You humiliated her. You're on probation. One more mistake, and you're gone." Jessica nodded, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Victoria turned to the remaining employees, her voice a command. "This store will close for the day," she said. "I want everyone out. Now." The customers began to file out, their whispers following them, their eyes darting to Amara with a mix of curiosity and guilt. Ethan, the employee who had shown a flicker of kindness, approached Amara, his voice soft. "I'm so sorry," he said, his tone genuine. "I should have done more." Amara nodded, her heart softening. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. The boutique emptied, leaving Amara and Victoria alone, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos of moments before. Victoria turned to her daughter, her expression softening, her hands reaching out to pull Amara into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry you went through that," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "No one should ever make you feel like you don't belong." Amara clung to her mother, her tears falling freely now. "I just wanted to buy you a gift," she whispered, her voice breaking. Victoria pulled back, her eyes shining with love. "You are the greatest gift I could ever ask for," she said, her voice warm. "And I'm so proud of you for standing your ground." Amara smiled, her heart full. Her mother's words a balm to the wounds of the day. Victoria picked up the navy clutch from the floor, her fingers brushing against the soft leather. "This is the one you wanted?" she asked, her tone gentle. Amara nodded, her smile widening. "For your birthday," she said. Victoria's eyes softened. "It's perfect," she said. "But let's make one thing clear. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You belong here, in this store, in this world, everywhere." Amara nodded, her tears drying, her resolve strengthening. She knew this moment was a turning point, a reckoning that had exposed the ugliness of prejudice, but also the power of justice, of family, of love. Victoria took her hand, her voice firm. "We're going to make sure this never happens again," she said, her tone a promise. "Not to you, not to anyone." Amara felt a fire ignite within her, a fire that would carry her forward, through the pain, through the doubt, toward a future where she would stand tall, where she would shine, where she would prove that no one could ever make her feel small again. When I said the aftermath of the incident at Luxe Boutique rippled through the community like a shockwave, the once pristine reputation of the store now tainted by the scandal that had unfolded. News of Richard's firing and Jessica's probation spread quickly, whispered conversations filling the halls of Oak Ridge High, local forums buzzing with the story of Amara Johnson, the high school girl who had been wrongfully accused, only to be revealed as the daughter of Victoria Johnson, the powerful owner of the Luxe chain. Amara sat in her bedroom that evening, the soft glow of her desk lamp casting shadows on the walls, her hands tracing the edges of the navy clutch her mother had insisted she take home. The purse was more than a gift now. It was a symbol of her resilience, of the justice that had prevailed. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "You belong here, in this world, everywhere." A mantra that had begun to heal the wounds of the day. Amara's phone buzzed with messages from classmates, friends who had heard the story. "I can't believe they did that to you," Tiana, her best friend, texted. "You're so strong. I'm so proud of you." Amara smiled, her heart warming at the support. She felt a shift within herself, a quiet strength that had been buried under years of doubt. She wasn't just the girl who had been humiliated. She was the girl who had stood her ground, who had fought back with the truth. And that made her feel powerful, unstoppable. The next morning, Victoria called a press conference at the flagship Luxe Boutique, the store's marble floors now a stage for change. Reporters gathered, their cameras flashing, their microphones poised as Victoria stood at a podium, her red suit a beacon of authority. Amara stood beside her, her navy dress a quiet nod to the clutch that had sparked this reckoning, her curly hair loose around her shoulders, her brown eyes steady with a newfound confidence. Victoria's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Yesterday, my daughter Amara was subjected to an unacceptable act of prejudice in one of my stores," she began, her words a thunderclap in the quiet room. "She was accused of theft without evidence, humiliated in front of customers, and treated as if she didn't belong. This is not the standard I expect from Lux, and it will not be tolerated." The reporters murmured, their pens scribbling furiously. Victoria continued, her tone unwavering. "Effective immediately, we are implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all employees. We are revising our policies to ensure that every customer, regardless of their background, is treated with the respect they deserve. And I am personally overseeing the creation of a diversity initiative to promote inclusivity across all our stores." The crowd applauded, their cheers a testament to the impact of her words. Amara felt her chest swell with pride, her mother's strength a mirror of her own. Victoria turned to her, her eyes softening. "Amara, would you like to say something?" she asked, her tone gentle. Amara hesitated, her hands trembling slightly, but she stepped forward, her voice clear. "I just want to say that no one should ever feel like they don't belong," she said, her words steady despite the cameras. "I didn't do anything wrong, but they made me feel like I did. I hope this changes things." "For me, for everyone." The room erupted into applause. Reporters shouting questions, their voices a cacophony of curiosity. But Amara stepped back, her mother's arm around her, her heart full. She had spoken her truth, and it had been heard in the days that followed. Lux Boutique underwent a transformation. Jessica, the employee who had accused Amara, issued a public apology at a staff meeting, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I was wrong," she said, her eyes downcast. "I judged Amara based on her appearance, and I'm so sorry for the pain I caused." Amara listened, her expression unreadable. She wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but she nodded, her voice soft. "Thank you for saying that," she replied, the moment a small step toward healing. Victoria hired a new manager, a woman named Elena, whose warm demeanor and commitment to fairness set a new tone for the store. Employees underwent training, their attitudes shifting as they learned the importance of inclusivity. Customers returned, their trust slowly rebuilding as Lux became a symbol of change. Amara, meanwhile, began to heal. The incident had left scars, but her mother's unwavering support and the community's response helped her find her strength. Victoria spent more time with her, bringing her to the Lux offices, where Amara watched her mother run the empire with grace and power. "You have a place here if you want it," Victoria said one day, her tone warm. "You could learn the business? Be a part of this?" Amara's eyes lit up, her mind racing with possibilities. She had always loved fashion, not just the products, but the stories they told, the way they could empower. She nodded, her smile wide. "I'd like that," she said, her voice steady. She began shadowing her mother, learning about inventory, marketing, customer relations, her confidence growing with each lesson. She also started a blog, a space where she shared her story, her thoughts on fashion, her hopes for a more inclusive industry. Her words resonated, young girls reaching out to thank her. "You've given me hope," one wrote. "I thought I'd never fit in, but you showed me I can." Amara read each message, her heart full. She was no longer just a victim of prejudice. She was a voice for change, a symbol of resilience. And as she sat in her room, her blog open on her laptop, the navy clutch on her desk, she felt a fire within her, a fire that would carry her forward, through the pain, through the doubt, toward a future where she would shine, where she would prove that no one could ever make her feel small again. One of the weeks following the press conference at Lux Boutique marked a transformative chapter in Amara's life. The once painful memory of her humiliation, now a catalyst for growth. Her bedroom had become a sanctuary of creativity. The walls adorned with sketches of outfits she'd begun designing. Inspired by her mother's empire and her own journey, her laptop sat open on her desk, her blog now a thriving platform with thousands of followers. Young girls who saw themselves in her story, who found strength in her words. Amara sat cross-legged on her bed, her navy clutch beside her, a symbol of the day she'd stood her ground. She wore a bright yellow sweater, a color that mirrored the confidence blooming within her. Her curly hair framing her face, her brown eyes alight with purpose. She was no longer the girl who had trembled under Jessica's accusations. She was a young woman ready to make her mark. Her mother, Victoria, had opened a door to a world Amara had never imagined, inviting her to shadow the operations at Lux. "You have a natural eye for this," Victoria had said one afternoon, her voice warm as they reviewed inventory lists in the sleek Lux office. Amara had smiled, her heart swelling. "I want to learn everything," she'd replied, her tone eager, and learn she did. She spent her weekends at the flagship store, observing how products were displayed, how customers were treated, how the business balanced luxury with inclusivity. She took notes, her mind buzzing with ideas. She suggested small changes, like featuring more diverse models in the store's campaigns, an idea Victoria implemented immediately. "You're a natural, Ba," her mother had said, her pride evident. Amara felt a fire within her, a passion for fashion that went beyond the products. It was about the stories they told, the way they could empower. She began to see herself not just as a customer, but as a future leader, someone who could shape the industry for the better. Her blog became a space to share these ideas, her posts a mix of personal reflections and insights into the fashion world. One entry, titled "Fashion for All," went viral. "Fashion isn't just about what you wear," she wrote. "It's about who you are. It's about belonging. No one should ever feel like they don't fit in. Not in a store, not in the world." The post resonated, comments flooding in. "You've changed how I see myself." One girl wrote, "Thank you for speaking up." Amara read each one, her heart full. She was making a difference. One word, one story at a time, inspired by her growing passion. Amara proposed an idea to her mother, a charity event at Lux Boutique to raise funds for underprivileged youth. "I want to give back," she said, her voice steady. "I want to help kids who feel like they don't belong, like I did." Victoria's eyes had softened, her smile wide. "Let's make it happen," she'd replied, her tone warm. The event, dubbed Style with Purpose, was set for the Saturday evening. The boutique transformed into a space of celebration, the marble floors lined with tables of donated items, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over a small runway. Amara had worked tirelessly to organize it, her hands steady as she hung decorations, her voice confident as she directed volunteers. She'd designed a special scarf for the event, a vibrant piece with patterns that celebrated diversity, each one sold to raise funds the night of the event. Amara stood at the entrance, her navy dress a nod to the clutch that had changed her life, her curly hair swept into an elegant updo, her smile radiant as she greeted guests. The boutique was packed, customers, local influencers, and community leaders filling the space, their voices a hum of excitement. Victoria stood beside her, her red suit a beacon of authority, her arm around Amara. "You've done something incredible here," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Amara smiled, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. Her tone warm, the event began with a fashion show, models walking the runway in Lux's latest collection, their diversity a reflection of the store's new ethos. Amara narrated, her voice clear and confident. "Tonight we're celebrating style, but also purpose," she said, her words echoing through the room. "Every purchase supports kids who deserve to feel seen, to feel valued." The crowd applauded, their cheers a wave of support. The scarf Amara had designed sold out within an hour, the funds raised surpassing their goal. Amara felt a rush of pride, her eyes shining with tears of joy. She had turned her pain into purpose, her story into action. The event also drew the attention of a local fashion magazine, who approached Amara for an interview. "You're a young voice in this industry," the reporter said, her tone earnest. "What's next for you?" Amara smiled, her mind racing with possibilities. "I want to keep learning, keep creating," she said, her voice steady. "I want to make fashion a space where everyone feels they belong." The reporter nodded, her eyes bright. "You're going to do big things," she said, and Amara believed her. The night ended with a speech from Victoria, her voice ringing with pride. "My daughter has shown us what resilience looks like," she said, her words a testament to Amara's journey. "She's reminded us that fashion isn't just about beauty, it's about humanity." The crowd cheered, their applause a roaring wave. Amara stood beside her mother, her heart full, her mind at peace. She knew this was just the beginning, that there would be more challenges, more opportunities, but she was ready to face them with the strength she'd found, the strength that had carried her from a moment of humiliation to a night of triumph. Amara had turned her pain into power, her story into a movement, and in doing so, she had shown the world that she belonged, that she mattered, that she could shine. The soft glow of the chandeliers at Luxe Boutique cast a warm light over the Style with Purpose charity event, the marble floors reflecting the vibrant energy of the evening, the air filled with the hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, and the occasional burst of applause from the runway. Amara stood near the entrance, her navy dress shimmering under the lights, her curly hair swept into an elegant updo, her brown eyes alight with a mix of pride and nervous excitement. The event had been a resounding success, the funds raised for underprivileged youth surpassing moral expectations. Her scarf design a sold-out hit, the crowd a mix of loyal customers, local influencers, and community leaders who had come to support the cause. Victoria stood beside her, her red suit a symbol of authority, her arm around Amara, her smile radiant. "You've outdone yourself," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Amara smiled, her heart full. "I just wanted to make a difference," she replied, her tone warm. The night had been a triumph, a testament to Amara's growth, her resilience, her vision. But as the event neared its close, a shadow from the past emerged to test her strength one final time. The glass doors of the boutique swung open, and a familiar figure stepped inside. Richard, the former manager who had humiliated Amara, his suit rumpled, his gray eyes burning with a mix of anger and desperation. His presence sent a ripple of tension through the room. Guests turning to whisper, their eyes darting between him and Amara. Victoria's arm tightened around her daughter, her expression hardening. "What is he doing here?" she murmured, her voice low but fierce. Amara's heart raced, her hands clenching into fists, the memory of Richard's cold accusations flashing through her mind. "Girls like you don't belong here," he'd said, his words a scar she'd worked hard to heal. Richard strode toward the center of the room, and his voice loud, his tone bitter. "So this is what Luxe has become," he called out, his words cutting through the chatter. "A charity case for people who don't belong?" The room fell silent, guests exchanging uneasy glances, their murmurs a mix of shock and discomfort. Amara felt her breath catch, her body tensing, but she didn't shrink back. Not this time. Victoria stepped forward, her voice a low growl. "You have no right to be here," she said, her tone icy. "Leave now." But Richard ignored her, his eyes locking onto Amara. His sneer a twisted mirror of the day they'd first clashed. "You think you've won?" he said, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can just waltz in here, play the victim, and take everything I worked for?" Amara's heart pounded, her anger rising through the fear. She took a step forward, her voice steady. "I didn't take anything," she said, her words clear. "You lost it. You lost it the moment you decided to judge me, to humiliate me, to treat me like I was nothing." The crowd murmured, their support a quiet wave. Richard's face flushed, his hands clenching into fists. "You don't belong here," he spat, his voice rising. "You never did. This isn't your world. It's mine." Amara felt the words hit her, a familiar sting, but this time they didn't break her. They fueled her. She took another step forward, her eyes blazing, her voice a force. "This is my world," she said, her tone unyielding. "I belong here. I belong everywhere. And you don't get to decide otherwise. Not anymore." The room erupted into applause. Guests standing, their cheers a roaring wave. Victoria's eyes shone with pride, her hand squeezing Amara's shoulder. Richard stood frozen, his anger faltering under the weight of the crowd's support, his sneer replaced by a flicker of fear. He'd come to cause trouble, to reclaim what he thought was his. But he'd underestimated Amara, underestimated the strength she'd found, the community she'd built. Elena, the new manager, stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Sir, you need to leave," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Two security guards appeared at her side, their presence a silent threat. Richard's shoulders slumped, his defiance crumbling. He turned to leave, his steps slow, his head bowed, the crowd parting to let him pass, their whispers following him. "He got what he deserved," one guest said. "She's incredible," another added. Amara watched him go, her heart steady. Her mind clear. She had faced her past, faced the man who had tried to break her, and she had won, not with anger, but with truth, with strength, with the power of her voice. The event continued, the tension dissolving into celebration, guests approaching Amara to offer their support. "You were amazing," a young influencer said, her tone warm. "You've inspired me." Amara smiled, her heart full. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. The night ended with a final speech from Victoria, her voice ringing with pride. "Tonight, we've seen what happens when we stand together," she said, her words echoing through the room. "My daughter has shown us the power of resilience, of purpose, of love. Let's keep building a world where everyone belongs." The crowd cheered, their applause a testament to the change Amara had sparked. As the guests began to leave, Amara stood with her mother, her scarf design in her hands, her mind at peace. She knew this moment was a milestone, a final confrontation that had solidified her strength, her place, her purpose. She had turned her pain into power, her humiliation into triumph, and in doing so, she had shown the world that she could stand tall, that she could shine, that she could lead. The soft hum of the studio lights filled the air, their warm glow casting a radiant sheen on Amara as she sat poised on a sleek white chair. Her vibrant teal blazer, a striking contrast against the minimalist backdrop, her curly hair cascading over her shoulders, her brown eyes sparkling with a quiet confidence that had become her signature. She was in the middle of a televised interview, a moment that marked the culmination of her journey. The studio was a modern space, all glass and clean lines with a large window framing the city skyline. The host, a woman named Maya Carter with a warm smile and a sharp mind, leaned forward, her voice steady and engaging. "Amara, your story has gone viral. From being wrongfully accused in a luxury boutique to becoming a voice for change. What message do you have for young people watching right now?" Amara took a deep breath, her hands resting calmly in her lap, her mind flashing back to the girl she'd been. The girl who had trembled under Richard's accusations, who had felt small in a world that didn't see her. "I want them to know that they are enough," she said, her voice clear and resonant. "No matter what anyone says, no matter how many times you are told you don't belong, you do. Your story, your strength, your voice, they matter. Keep fighting, keep dreaming, because you can change the world." The studio audience erupted into applause, their cheers a testament to the power of her words. Maya nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. "That's incredible, Amara," she said. "And what about those who don't have the support you did? What would you say to them?" Amara's expression softened, her voice warm with empathy. "Find your inner strength," she replied. "Sometimes the greatest support comes from within. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, even if it's just one person, and never stop believing in yourself." The crowd clapped again, their faces alight with inspiration. And Amara felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing her story was touching lives far beyond the studio walls. The interview marked a new chapter in Amara's journey, one that had begun with humiliation but ended with empowerment. In the months following the Style with Purpose event, Amara's role at Lux had grown. She'd taken on a part-time position as a junior consultant, working alongside her mother to implement the new diversity initiatives. Her ideas were bold, her passion infectious. She spearheaded a campaign featuring real customers of all backgrounds in Lux's advertising. The images, a celebration of inclusivity that drew praise from the fashion community. "You're changing the game," Victoria had said, her voice thick with pride. Amara had smiled, her heart full. "I'm just getting started," she'd replied, her tone steady. Her blog continued to thrive, her followers now in the tens of thousands, her posts a mix of fashion insights and personal reflections. One entry, "The Power of Belonging," became a manifesto for change. "Fashion should be a space where everyone feels seen," she wrote. "It's not just about clothes, it's about identity, about humanity." The post was shared widely. Hashtags like #Amara inspires and #Fashion for all trending online as young people reaching out to thank her. "You've given me the courage to be myself," one Russia. Amara read each message, her heart swelling. She was no longer just a girl who had been wronged. She was a voice, a leader, a force. Her work with Lux also led to new opportunities. A prestigious fashion institute reached out, offering her a scholarship to their summer program for young leaders. "We've seen what you've done at Lux," the director wrote. "We believe you have the potential to shape the future of fashion." Amara accepted, her mind racing with excitement. The program was a whirlwind of learning, her days filled with workshops on sustainable design. Her evenings spent networking with industry professionals. She presented a project, a line of accessories inspired by her journey, each piece a story of resilience. The institute showcased her work at a gala, where Amara spoke, her voice steady. "Fashion is for everyone," she said, her words echoing through the room. The audience stood, their applause a roaring wave. Amara felt a rush of pride, her eyes shining with tears of joy. She had come so far, back at Oak Ridge High. Amara's story had become legend. Her classmates now saw her as an inspiration. She started a fashion club at school, a space where students could explore design, discuss inclusivity, and support each other. The club became a haven, its members a mix of dreamers who found strength in Amara's journey. Tiana joined, her smile wide. "You've changed everything," she said, her voice warm. Amara smiled. "We've changed it together," she replied. The club organized a small fashion show, a celebration of diversity that drew the whole school. Amara walked the runway in a dress she'd designed, its fabric a vibrant celebration of her heritage. The crowd cheered, their applause a testament to her impact. Months later, Amara stood on the stage of a national youth summit, her first major speaking engagement. The lights were blinding, the audience a sea of faces watching her every move. She spoke about her journey, her voice steady, her presence commanding. "I was told I didn't belong," she said, her words echoing through the hall. "But I learned that belonging isn't about fitting in. It's about standing out. It's about being yourself, unapologetically." The audience stood, their applause a roaring wave. Amara took a bow, her eyes shining with tears of joy. She felt powerful, unstoppable, a force. And as she stepped off the stage, her mother waiting in the wings, her smile radiant, Amara knew this was just the beginning, that there would be more challenges, more dreams to chase. But she was ready to face them with the strength she'd found, the strength that had carried her from a moment of humiliation to a stage of inspiration. Amara had turned her pain into purpose, her story into a movement. And in doing so, she had shown the world that she belonged, that she mattered, that she could shine. Mara turned humiliation into triumph, revealing her mom as the store's owner, inspiring change. Thank you for listening. Like and share if you're moved, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for our latest stories of justice and resilience.